we are here today to talk about sex or the lack thereof. And I know, again, I just want to reiterate this is a vulnerable conversation. So I think what I'm going to do is try to be as open as possible to make other people feel comfortable. I have an 8-week-old new baby. I'm also the mom of a 4-year-old. Nobody's having sex in my house right now, and I don't always hear other people admit that openly. And so I'm just really excited to learn from you, Elizabeth. And I know there's no normal, but we'll get into it. So I guess let's
Yeah.
kick it off by just um talking about the elephant in the room. Why do people not talk about this? Why aren't people open about this?
I think there's so many layers to that. The first is that it is an intimate experience with your partner. And so it makes sense, on a level that's not pathological in any way that you would want to keep that private. I think that there's some aspects of not talking about it to every single person that that can be healthy because it's important that we respect boundaries between, your partner and yourself
Of
and the
course.
relationship. But I think that the other layers of it, of course, it's a societal taboo. And so, in general, people just don't talk about sex, which is interesting because it's kind of always in front of you in some way, right? Like
I was gonna
marketing.
say, it's in our
Yeah,
faces. Yeah.
it's all over the place. It's all over, social media is very hypersexualized, TV, movies, it's everywhere, but nobody really talks about it in terms of like their real lives. And if you hear about people talking about it, it's often kind of morphed into this like memifying of it, like men in the locker room talking about sex or something. It's not really, there's not a lot of guidance on how do you just talk about it in a way that's going to be productive or helpful towards you. I think there's embarrassment. So beyond just kind of socialization and like, okay, we have hypersexualization here, but we kind of have this hypo-sexualization in terms of talking about it. People are also embarrassed. They're worried that it means something about their relationship. And I also think people are hesitant to get feedback, especially during vulnerable periods of time. And so you might wish that you could talk to somebody about it, but there might also be a fear. Well, if I share this with somebody, are they going to say something to me that makes me feel nervous about something I already feel nervous about? Are they going to say, well, you're not doing the right thing, or your partner's a jerk, or you're being a jerk, or whatever it is? And so there's so many layers, and some of the people listening might have other thoughts on why they don't talk about it, but it's not talked about.
And is something wrong with us if we're not having sex at home? Like, can we just like talk a little bit about the expectation and if maybe we feel judged because we're judging ourselves?
Yeah. So nothing's wrong with you if you're not having sex at home. um, and I think it's also obviously very relationship specific. There might be couples where they say this feels wrong for us. And that's a very different thing than saying something's wrong with me or something's wrong with our relationship, to say, just this feels different for us. It feels wrong for us. It doesn't feel like what we would usually do.
Yeah.
Especially in the, postpartum phase, it's really common for people not to have sex at all. And then even beyond that, in the early childhood years, it's very common for people to have less sex than they had before children. And
Yeah.
that makes sense because you have more stressors, you've got more responsibilities, there's less time for maybe spontaneity, and there's
You're
going to be,
tired.
you're tired, and there's less time for those kind of things that would accelerate desire. And there's also more conflict. There just is when
Yeah.
you're in those younger years. And I think something, and I don't want to blab for too long, I know you have more questions, but something that comes up a lot, which makes me really sad when I'm working with people as couples, is they don't think it's normal. And that thought is actually what causes problems between them. So they will come in and they will say something like, it's not normal that she doesn't want to have sex. Like, let's say I'm talking about a hetero couple, and
Yeah.
the guy says, this just doesn't feel normal. It must mean that she's not attracted to me anymore. There's no way that it's been 3 months since the baby and she doesn't want to have sex, yet. It
Yeah.
just can't be normal. And something that I often share with them is I've done this for many, many years. I've worked with hundreds of couples postpartum, and it actually is very normal. And it is often not related to you specifically. It's often related to many other things. And I'm wondering, are you able to open up a little bit to the idea that there could be other real reasons? One of the things that happens is that the partner will often dismiss
Yes.
the mother's reasons. They'll often,
Yeah.
the woman might say things like, you know, it's truly not you. I love you. I'm attracted to you. I just don't feel good, or I'm afraid it's going to hurt,
Yep.
or I'm too tired, or I'm leaking breast milk and I just don't even want you to like
Touch me.
touch
Yes.
it or smell it or
Yep.
anything. I just feel gross. And their partner will actually dismiss those as reasons. They will say in the therapy room, I don't believe it. I think those are excuses. I just don't think you care about me anymore.
Hmm.
I think that's a huge downside to us not talking about it, because the media that people are exposed to makes you think that that couldn't possibly be the reason. The only reason you don't want to have sex with somebody is you're not attracted to them.
Mhm.
And that's just not the case.
Have you heard of this new concept called chorny? Chorny?
No, is it
It's
being
like
horny because somebody does chores for you?
exactly. And it is true, like, in my case,
Yeah,
my brain does not shut off for sex or just, like, for relaxation unless my kitchen is cleaned, the dishwasher is unloaded, the toys are put away, like, that to me tells my body, "Okay, I can chill."
yep.
And the sexiest thing my partner can do for me, which still he does not understand, is literally spray the countertops with multi-purpose, like, surface whatever
Yeah, you
spray, and,
walk
like,
into that house and it smells
ah,
like bleach, and you're
the
just
yeah, that is hot.
you're like,
Uh,
"I don't need any incense. I don't need
but no, no
any bleach."
candles. N In fact, that won't help because then I'll be like, "Are they gonna light the curtains on fire?" Um, but yeah, so I was
Yeah,
just curious if you've heard of that. And you brought up embarrassment, and I think what you were talking about was embarrassment to talk to your friends potentially about the lack of sex or whatever it is your sex life looks like at home, which I 100% get. Although my girlfriends happen to be very open about this, and we are very much like all on the same page where it's
that's
like,
great.
it's really hard right now to want to have sex with our partners, which we can
Mhm.
unpack in a second. But is there also embarrassment to address this with your partner that you've seen in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very hard thing to bring up. Even in a first session, I'll often meet with couples, and one thing I know to do is to ask about sex directly,
Yes.
because people will not bring it up. They will bring up any other thing, but they will not bring up sex on their own. That could be like the hugest sticking point for them, and they will not say anything about sex.
I feel so validated hearing you say that because we saw a couples therapist. My mother-in-law has been sick for a while, and we saw a couples
Mhm,
therapist kind of like get on the same page about
mhm.
how we wanted to deal with that. But of course, like, inevitably, we opened up about other stuff in our lives and our relationship, and it actually was amazing. And not once in 2 years did we talk about sex. In fact,
It's really
we'd be
common.
like, could you believe if Dr. Nancy asked us this? Like, we were embarrassed to even talk about it with her. We're not embarrassed to talk about it with each other. But I
Mhm.
find you saying that just like incredibly validating. And I feel like it is so game changing that you just bring it up directly and ask because you set the precedent out of the gate. Like, hey, this is normal to talk about and not awkward.
Yeah, I think that you're socialized to think it's a rude thing to bring up. And even though the therapy room is like different socially, there's
Yeah.
still this sense of like, I don't know if I should tell this stranger something about sex. And like,
Yeah.
especially if like she's older than me and that might be weird. And so yeah, I often ask about it directly. And like you pointed out, sometimes they might be embarrassed to bring it up to me. Sometimes they might be embarrassed to talk about it with each other. And sometimes they might be fearful to talk about it with each other. And
Hmm.
I find that the fearful part is harder than the embarrassment part.
Let's unpack that.
Embarrassment.
I'm so curious. Yeah.
Yeah, like embarrassment, you can kind of, especially in couples therapy, once the therapist brings it up, like they can blush for a second and be like, yeah, we're not having much sex, or
Yeah.
it's been awkward, or it's been hard. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But I think that the fear is really hard, and that's often when people will hide what
Yeah.
they're actually feeling. And so if someone's embarrassed in therapy and I ask, they'll say it often. But if they're afraid that they're going to hurt their partner's feelings,
Yeah.
or that their partner's going to be mad, or that their partner is going to shut them down, then they're not going to bring it up. And I when I meet with couples, I always meet with them as a unit, and then I meet with them separately for an hour,
Mm,
because I know this about human nature. I know people aren't always going to be able to say things that they need to say without some help. And so when I meet with them one on one, that's when they can express, I didn't want to say this in the room with her, or with him, or them, but um, I haven't been into it recently, or I do find myself not as attracted anymore, or
mm,
I feel like the thing when I initiate and they reject, I feel really embarrassed. Like, is there something wrong with my body? And those scary things to admit there can be a bridge to sharing them with the partner. But fear is often what creates, I think, the lack
yeah.
of talking about it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I can only like I obviously only, well, not obviously, I only have sex with my partner. That's what happens in our household. And I completely understand that, like, not wanting to say something to his face. I mean, it must be really interesting when you separate the couples to see really what comes out and then to be able to bring everyone back together. No one's knocking down my door right now, at home because I think equally, and I don't know if this is talked about as much, like my partner, who's a male, is also tired. And I think like
Mhm.
he's had some feelings about it because, like, as a guy in society, you're told that like you should be having sex all of the time, and it's like not normal if you're not horny. But they're men in a hetero relationship are also going through parenting for the first time and young kids for the first time. And
Absolutely.
it's
And that perinatal phase is related to them
got it.
too. So when
Yeah.
you think about perinatal mental health, it's also men have perinatal mental health issues. They are not always from the same source, they're not always the same thing, but there is also a mental health impact. And there are many men who um, the stereotypical role might be reversed, where actually the man is saying, I'm too tired, or I don't feel like, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you, is also a
Mm,
common kind of turn off. It's not like they're turned off by their partner, but they're like, I saw you give birth,
yeah.
or I saw you have a C-section, and now like I'm kind of afraid to touch you.
Mhm.
Um, Also, the reality is like there might be some things that are not attractive to them, not because they're not attracted to their partner, but there might be like some parts of them that maybe like breast milk is
I
not
get
attractive to them. And like that's just reality. And I think that's also hard to pull apart, because for the person who's, hearing that, it's like, well, you're not attracted to me anymore. And they're like, no, it's not that. It's just
yeah.
there's a lot going on. One thing I'll say that's really interesting is that I've often found that men are become uninterested at times in sex during the pregnancy,
Hmm.
and that is very hard for the mother,
Yeah.
because it is a sudden shift. The baby's not there yet, and there might have been a lot of sexual activity, and then all of a sudden there's kind of this like hesitancy from their partner. And often the reason for that people will express is like, I'm afraid to hurt the baby, which
Mhm.
I will tell you, most
Yeah.
men that have had this problem, that's what they'll say it was. And where conflict starts is when they're not believed. So the partner says, no, I just think you're not into me anymore. This is
Mm.
fair. Like, I'm carrying this baby, and just because I have a belly, you're not like wanting me. And they're like, no, I'm just like actually feel like I'm going to hurt you or the baby.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that comes back to something that's really important, which is what tends to actually cause a lot of breakdown is that people don't believe each other. about the reason for what's going on. So
Mhm.
a partner might not say, I'm actually just really tired. It's not you. And their partner is saying, it can't, you can't be tired every day. This can't be because you're tired, right?
Got it. Yep.
Or partner will say, I don't want to hurt the baby. And they'll be like, that can't, that's, Google says it's not going to hurt the baby. So that can't be the reason. And then there's
Mhm.
conflict because you're kind of dismissing each other's, what
For
you're
sure.
sharing. Yeah.
So what are, like, if you did want to have this conversation with your partner without someone like you in the room, what's a good way to just bring it up? So, like, for instance, if my partner comes to me and says, I'm just really tired every day,
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, that's hurting my feelings. I maybe think he's saying that or she's saying that because she's not into my body. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna like bring it up in that moment because that's probably not the best time to bring it up. What
Mhm.
are like some conversation starters for people at home to try out?
The most important thing is that you're thinking about your partner as your friend
Mhm.
and your co-parent and somebody
Yeah.
you love, and that you're entering into that conversation with the assumption that the conversation is going to go well. And that's very hard to do, especially with complex or taboo topics, right? But if you enter into the conversation saying, like, so, like, what's going on? You just never want to have sex anymore. That's you're entering into that conversation with an assumption that your partner has some sort of negative sentiment towards you or that the conversation's not going to go well. And then your partner is going to respond defensively to that.
Yeah, like, even hearing you say that, a wall went up for me, and
A
you weren't
wall
even
goes up.
yes.
And, for the person expressing it, this is such a high anxiety topic. And I try to help people understand this. Sometimes when people sound harsh or critical, it does not excuse the harshness of the
Yeah.
criticism. We need to learn to do it another way. Sometimes it's fueled by anxiety, right? And so there's all this anxiety. And instead of going up to somebody with like vulnerability and being like, hey, honey, can we talk about something? I really miss you. Like, we used to have sex all the time and I miss it. And just what's going on? Instead, we're like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
And we do that with a lot of things, not just sex. And so the first rule is you want to have a gentle startup. And having a gentle startup has to do with how you bring it up and when you bring it up. So, do you bring it up while they're in the middle of typing up a report for their boss? That's not gentle. They're going to be like, what? I can't respond to this right now.
Mhm, mhm.
So, you bring it up gently and based off of the vulnerable feelings of like what is it that you're really trying to get to.
Yeah.
You're not trying to get to accusations of them. You're trying to get to connection again. So I want to connect with you and I'm wondering what's going on. I've noticed is a great way to start a conversation.
Cool.
I've
Love that.
noticed, and not you, I've noticed you have been very blah, 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 but I've noticed we haven't been having as much sex. And
Mm.
I notice that I'm feeling really sad about that.
Mhm.
And I'm feeling a little worried. And you can even say, you can narrate what you're feeling, like what you're worried about. I'm feeling a little worried, like that it's about me.
Mhm,
Is
mhm.
that what's going on? That's very different than the accusation. What is going on with you? You must not even care about me anymore.
Yes. Okay, so I've noticed "we" into maybe an "I've noticed I." So it's
Yeah.
like, yes, okay. That makes complete sense. I really like that. Um, okay. So start with that at home. I've
Start with
noticed
that.
"we."
Yes. And start with what you really want from it, right? Like, I don't want to accuse you or paint you into this corner that like this is exactly why you're doing it. What I want is to feel connected to you.
Yeah.
Or what I want is to relieve my worries. I feel worried. I just have this voice in my head saying maybe like something's wrong.
Yep.
And I kind of want to relieve those worries. What's going on? So talk about what you actually want from the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. I really like that. Now we talk about, or I hear a lot about this concept of being quote unquote touched out. Can
Mhm.
you just talk a little bit about what's really going on when someone feels touched out and how couples can handle that dynamic?
Yeah. So if you've ever heard the term touched out, you probably immediately know what it means for you. You might not know why you feel that way, but oh my gosh, you said you have a 4-year-old. That's like
Yeah.
the ultimate, like crawling on you,
Yeah.
like grabbing your.
Drool, sticky. Yeah.
Yes, I have a 2-year-old, and I love her touching me, but there's moments where, she's pulling on my pants while I'm trying to like get something out of the car. And then I try to
Mhm,
take her hand and move it off my pants. And then she grabs me. And then my son is
mhm,
like, Mom, like tapping my shoulder. And then,
mhm.
my husband and I are hanging out in bed. And I'm like, God, I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Don't touch me anymore.
Yeah.
And so what touched out really is related to is a physiological response that you start to have to overstimulation.
Got it.
And so you have been, in this case, maybe touched all day, but it doesn't need to be literal touch. It's anything that's like touch is representative of that. But it's not just the fact that my daughter was pulling on my pants. It's also that my son was asking me to get something for him, and the dog was about to run out the door. And
Mhm,
I know something's due at work, but my kids aren't going to bed until 6 p.m. Like, and so I'm not going to be able to get back to it. And so there's a lot of overstimulation, especially in the early years with children,
mm,
um, where people need a lot for you, and you're having to carry a lot of cognitive load and physical load to deal with that, and physiological load. And so when people are touched out, there's usually some sort of physiological response in which their like adrenal system, like their heart is racing, their muscles are tightening, is overworked. And by the end of the day, there is kind of this like shut down feeling of I don't have anything left.
Wow, I didn't know it was physiological like that. That's so interesting, but makes complete sense. It's like when kids are overstimulated or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like, in the moment, let's just like play out a scenario. You're in bed with your partner. He's trying to initiate some sort of situation in the bed, but you're feeling touched out.
Mm-hmm.
What can you say in that moment so it's not like shame?
Yeah. So, and not to shame your initial responses that maybe you've had in the past, because I think that it's very human. If you're feeling physiologically overwhelmed, you're not always going to respond well.
Yes.
If you're physiologically overwhelmed, you're either going to respond in a really activated way. So, like, can you stop touching me?
Mhm.
Or in a very shut down way where you're like, "Ugh," and you like turn over or something like that. Or you're going to respond in kind of that flight way where maybe you're like, God, I can never be left alone. And you get up and you walk out of the bedroom.
Yep.
And so those are normal human responses to feeling overwhelmed. And that's like our system being hijacked, and we can respond to that differently so that our partner doesn't feel shamed and rejected for wanting to connect with us, right?
Mhm.
So as much as you can, if you're noticing any of those things internally coming up for you, name them out loud instead of it's almost better to say to your partner, I am so overwhelmed right now that I notice myself wanting to be mad at you, or
Yeah.
I'm so overwhelmed right now, I just want to go lay in another bed, than it is to just do those things. So you can name it. The other thing that if you can get past it, if you can say, whew, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm not going to give in to this activation I feel, saying, I see what you're trying to do. Point out what you see your partner is trying to do. I know you want to connect with me and I love you. And I just, it sucks that I like cannot imagine myself being touched right now. I'm really overwhelmed. That's going to
Mhm.
be much more effective than the other things. Now,
Mm.
can I promise you that your partner won't be shamed? I don't know. Every partner deals with things differently. There's certainly a partner out there that might be like, great, well, now I'm never going to touch you again because every time I do, you tell me it's like you're overwhelmed and now I'm violating you. Like that's possible. So, I'm not going to say that these things are always going to work, but what they will work for is like your own integrity and your own ability to navigate things with kindness and fairness and love. Um, and then after that happens, even if it happens once, attempting to have a conversation about it in advance next time.
Mhm.
So instead of you waiting until bedtime and then you're just kind of praying that nobody gets in bed with you or touches you, saying to your partner, this is like a very hard period for me. And it's not ideal for me either for like lifelong. But right now, like by the end of the day, I just really kind of feel like I can't be touched again. And I don't want you to take that or experience that as rejection. I
Mhm.
want you to really hear me when I say it's because I'm tired. And it would be very helpful to me if maybe you don't have that expectation at nighttime right now. That
Yeah,
way, your partner is aware of how to be successful
I
with
love
you.
that. And on the flip side, let's say you're the one who your partner is telling you, maybe not in these words, but I'm touched out right now.
Yeah.
What can the partner do to be more understanding of that in the moment?
I think a few things. The first is remembering that it's not a personal affront. So when people hear something like that, sometimes they can feel really rejected or defensive. And just like I said, sometimes criticism comes from a very understandable human
Yeah.
place. That comes from a very understandable place too. So if you or your partner has ever been in the position of somebody saying, I'm just touched out, or I'm too stressed, or I don't want to be touched tonight. And your initial reaction is like, well, fine, I guess we're never going to have sex then. Or I won't ask you for now on. You can be the one to initiate, or to just shut down from them completely and say, well, if they're not going to do it, then I'll just never touch them again. Those
Yeah.
are all natural responses to
But
feeling
hurtful. Yeah.
hurt. And one way to kind of grow into your wise adult self is to notice that you're becoming defensive and to be able to name it for yourself. And instead, to be able to validate what they're saying, which doesn't mean you agree. Like they might
Mhm.
say, I'm tired, and like tonight's not a good night to have sex. And you might be like, I'm not tired. Tonight feels like a great night to have sex. Doesn't mean that you have to change how you feel, but you can say, I get why you would be tired. That
Yeah.
makes sense to me. And I believe you. Like I said, one of the biggest causes of conflict is when people try to say that somebody doesn't feel how they say they're feeling. And what I see with the sex stuff, and I know I'm beating a dead horse with this,
No.
is that happens so much that the partner will say, that can't be it. Like every night you say it's because you're tired and I did help with the dishes today and you did take a nap, but you're still tired. So it can't be it. And it will go such a long way in your relationship if you're able to say, I'm so sorry that you are still so tired.
Yeah, I believe you.
I believe you and I love you. And then does that mean that you neglect your own feelings of neglect? No. But in that moment, it's usually not the best moment. You find another moment and you can go to your partner and you can say, I completely trust that you're exhausted. I completely believe that you're exhausted. And I really miss having physical touch and affection from you. Like that's a human need that I have. And I'm wondering, I'm not trying to pressure you, but I'm just wondering, like, is there anything we can do to create an environment where maybe that's a part of our lives again?
Mhm.
Um, and that partner might say, well, we're only 8 weeks in and I haven't even fully healed. So not right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully that partner can also paint a picture of hope in some way. Like, yes, I see that too. I think that something we could try is, or it's only 8 weeks in. I think at 3 months, maybe my body will start to feel a little bit more back to normal. And like
Mhm.
that's maybe sometime that we could revisit more regular affection. But it would mean a lot to me if right now it's almost like off the table unless it kind of naturally happens. Um, but you want to give that person room to say this is something I need, and to not say I can't believe you're bringing that up right now when I'm going through X, Y, and Z, which is very tempting to say, but to actually care enough, and be happy enough that your partner's bringing it to you because it means that they're expressing concerns about your relationship, which
That's what I was thinking, like,
yeah.
it's a vulnerable thing to be able to do that too. This next topic hits close to home for me because I feel like in some ways this is how I feel disconnected, but not distant. Like, if I were to describe my relationship, I'm obsessed with my husband. I love him. Could he be better? Of course, but he is my person, and we really do, at our core, have an amazing relationship. But we're new into this new baby. We have a 4-year-old who hasn't been sleeping a lot. I was uncomfortable throughout the whole pregnancy, and it does feel like we're close as parents and partners, but not necessarily as romantic partners. So what would I know, like, I don't want to get too personal on this. I want to make it general, but knowing that about my relationship, um, what would be your advice to kind of do some repairing at home, where maybe it's okay and we just have this conversation where like we will come back to each other romantically. It's just we're in this season of life.
I think that's a great question, and it happens to a lot of people. And it's like a balancing act, you know. I think
Yeah.
that um, what you said about this is a season of life, like it kind of is. So
Mhm.
when people come in and they're like, we're not as connected as we were before, something I point out is like, well, you have an enormous time suck that didn't exist before, and you're both having to kind of emotionally and cognitively figure out how do you fit in what's most important right now. And especially in the early years, it's very much like survival. Like, okay, we have 50 things we wish we could do, but the day is still the same amount of hours long, and we have more energy that has to go towards these two people for you, um,
Yeah.
and work and all of these things. Like, what can we realistically do? And so, one thing that I like to do with couples is to first of all just normalize it and say, how could you possibly have the same level of connection right now that you had because you had time to sit and talk until 2 a.m., to go on dates, to have sex in bed all morning, to how could you possibly have that same connection? We're not saying it's a worse connection, it's a different connection.
Mhm.
And it looks differently right now because whatever fed that past connection, there's not enough food for it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the first thing is like, let's just start by normalizing it. And then the second is, when would we know it's a problem?
Yes, that was gonna be my question. Like, what are the signs of like emotional disconnection?
Yeah. So when is it at the point where it's like, okay, but now it feels like this has just become normalized.
Yeah.
This isn't just us kind of consciously choosing what we feed.
Yes.
Um, and it's almost like we've become, quote, lazy because we've gotten so used to this. And now instead of at the end of the night hanging out, when finally the kids have started to sleep, what we're choosing to do instead is get back on our laptop or
We're all on our
scroll on
phone.
our phone when
Yeah.
we actually do have the time now.
Yeah.
And so I talk to people about checking in about that a lot with each other. Like, I feel like we're really connected as parents. We're really connected as, like, we are friends, but there's maybe some romance and some depth to that friendship. We're not as connected. Do you think that realistically there is space for that now, and being really honest with each other and being able to say, I'm actually not worried about it because realistically, we go through the whole day and then we actually just both go to bed, versus being able to be honest and say, yeah, I mean, I spent the entire night last night. I'm just making this up, but like, yeah, you spent the night and the kids went to bed at 7 and you spent the night downstairs in the basement watching a game. And instead of
Mhm.
joining you, I sat up here and scrolled on my phone, and maybe we
Mhm.
really could have had some connection here.
So how do you feel about like implementing, and maybe this isn't realistic for every night, but like certain nights when your life can handle this, meaning like like you said, your kids are sleeping, putting the phones just away.
I very much believe that people need to put their phones away more.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, and one of the things I write about in my book is that we kind of have this like 24-hour work cycle now, which, because our computers and our phones are easily accessible, we can hop back into all sorts of jobs, even jobs where we probably don't actually need to do it, but it takes our attention. We can hop into our email, we can scroll through our LinkedIn, we can do all sorts of stuff. And therefore, like our energy and attention that should be in our quote home at that time is seeping out of it. It's like you have holes all over your house, and all of the energy is going out of it through these computers and through these phones. And a lot of the couples that I work with, at first it'll seem like they don't have time. And when we talk about, yeah, but what happens if you just promise that after dinner, no more computers are open? And if you do need that, like there's days of the week, like maybe Mondays and Thursdays, Mondays starting the week, Thursdays kind of ending, you do get back on your computers and it's nice. You can kind of get ahead of things. But maybe the rest of the week, you promise each other
Mhm.
you won't do that. And that makes a lot of time. And people will come in and say, yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad how much time was being sucked by these computers, and actually how very little I was getting done, um, that I couldn't get done somehow the next day.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm on my phone at night, I'm not getting anything done. I'm just consuming BS.
You're
Yeah.
consuming BS, and then maybe you get like one thing done that makes you feel productive, but it's not, right? Like you like
Yeah.
reshare a post or something like
Yeah.
that,
Yes, yes, yes.
or respond to one email that also would have taken you 2 minutes to respond to in the morning.
Mhm.
So I really, really, really preach, and I practice what I preach. I actually got rid of my own smartphone. I only have a flip phone.
Explain that. Wow.
Yeah, I don't believe in them.
That is amazing. So, like, I'm
Yeah,
just curious because you have a big social presence. So,
yeah.
how do you maintain that while not having a smartphone?
Well, you can do it on your computer. So I have times of the day that are my work times, and I do things on my computer. But I also had to make, and another thing I talk about in my book is having to make um, decisions that are sacrifices that
Yeah.
are good for your relationships. And I think that in society we got to a point where we were given a really good message of you can be anything, you can do anything, you shouldn't have to sacrifice. And in some ways that was initially a good message, where it was, women, you can have a job and you can still have a family, and like
Hmm.
there's creative ways to live. And that message became a monster.
Yeah.
And the monster started to tell us, you don't have to make any sacrifices. So you should be able to still have a happy marriage and a happy family, but
Yeah.
also you should be able to be social media famous at the same time. And this is my own example. Or you should also be able to, run all these businesses at the same time and feel no impact on any of them.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality. And so one thing I had to decide is, if I truly believe, from what I've seen in the research, what I've seen in my own couples, that a huge downfall of relationships right now is technology. I deeply, deeply believe that, based off of what I've seen and what I've read. And
Yeah.
if I was going to believe that, I could not, in good conscience, keep my smartphone. And what that would mean is I would have to make sacrifices for the benefit of my relationships. I've lost followers. Like,
Hmm.
I think I've lost 20,000 followers because I do
Hmm.
not post as frequently. I do not engage as frequently. Um, I've had to hire people to help me with my business, because I am not going to be the first person at 11 p.m. who gets back to someone with their payroll question. That email goes to somebody who's a payroll person, and they wake up at 9 a.m. and they get it, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so there's sacrifices. It's not always easy to say, I want to do the right thing for my relationship. But it makes a huge difference. And that's my little soapbox about
No, I mean,
technology.
I'm sitting here thinking like, could I ever do that? Like, given my business, and I guess I could,
You
right?
can.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, there's the one thing that's hard. And again, this is kind of, everybody here is like, I came to talk about sex. But actually, what we're seeing is people have less sex because of their phones.
Oh, definitely.
And this is like seen again and again in the literature around relationships and sex. This is what we're seeing in real life. People have way, way less sex than they did because of phones. Yeah, but you can do everything. The one thing that's hard is expectations from others.
Mm,
So, somebody will be like, can you Venmo me? And you
mm.
can Venmo from your computer, but I will say, yeah, I'll Venmo you when I get home. And sometimes people are like, oh, but I need it right now. And I'm like, no, I'll pay.
That's a yeah.
You
No,
have to wait 30 minutes. When I get home, I will send you the Venmo.
I'm good for it, I promise.
I promise. Yeah.
It is, there's no doubt, even just seeing in my household, we just sit on the couch and scroll side by side. I mean,
Yeah.
how could that not impact our intimacy,
It
our
impacts
physical
intimacy
intimacy?
because it is, something that's really important when you think about intimacy is how energy is flowing in and out of your relationship. And when you want an intimate relationship, you have a very boundaried way of navigating energy flowing in and out. And so that could be emotional energy, intellectual energy, financial energy. You can imagine, like, if you're sending like all this money out to everybody and then your family is suffering, that's going to cause problems. Well, the
Of
same
course.
thing happens when you're sending all your emotional energy out, you think about a house, right, with the windows open and all the energy is going out, and you're sending it all out to social media or to your text group threads with your friends, and these aren't inherently bad
No,
things.
of course, there's time if you want to make time
There's
for them in your
time,
life.
but
Yeah,
there's no boundaries on it. And so
yeah,
you've got this energy that you and your partner could be sharing at the end of the day, but you're saying to your partner who's like, hey, why are you looking at your phone? You're saying, well, I had to respond back to Ashley really quickly. And, Ashley could have probably waited until the next day. And I'm the guiltiest of this, which is why I have good examples of what it really looks like.
yeah.
And so if you can have boundaries on that energy, you can still have your friends and your group texts and all that stuff. But you're also saying, I'm protecting the
My
very limited,
relationship.
fragile amount of connective energy I have.
Yeah. And the time, right? Like my husband
Time.
and I both just go to work. So the not only is the overlap time just that we have
Yep.
together is limited.
Very limited.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
phones are really, really, really scary.
they are really scary.
Yeah.
And flip phones are great.
Okay, great. You got to be like
I need to become a
sponsored by like
spokesperson.
Motorola. Yeah, exactly. Well, Elizabeth, you've already been over generous with your time, and I just want to say thank you for making these taboo conversations less taboo, making us feel comfortable to open up. I love your platform, and everybody should check you out, even if you are posting less than you
I'm
want.
there sometimes.
Okay, good. And hopefully we'll get to do this again because I think, given the number of RSVPs for this event, it's a popular topic.
I would love to talk about it again. And thank you
Awesome.
everyone for being here and being
Thank
open
you.
to listening and talking about sex. And hopefully this helped you to kind of normalize that it's like a messy thing and it's hard for most people. And if you can have open communication and trusting communication, it does get better.
I've noticed we. I'm gonna leave with
We,
that line.
lots of we.
Lots of we. All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Have a wonderful Monday.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.